Quest for the Tree Kangaroo, an expedition to the cloud forest of New Guinea, day 1. The text was written by Cy Montgomery and the photographs are by Nick Bishop. First, we see a map of the world with a focus on New Guinea. Then we have a zoomed in map of Papua New Guinea, which is the island that our story takes place in. The photographs in this book are simply beautiful. A big stuffed animal on a Stone Age island. It feels like we've walked into a living fairy tale. Our heads are literally in the clouds. Though we're just a few degrees south of the equator, we're bathed in cool mist. We're 10,000 feet up in the mountains, and here the trees are cloaked in clouds. The ground is carpeted with thick green moss. In the cloud forest of Papua New Guinea, ferns grow in the trees like those that the dinosaurs knew. Moss and ferns, vines, and orchids hang from branches like the beards of old wives' wizards. In a place like this, we half expect a hobbit or a troll to show up, but it's better than that. The animals who really do live here are even more fantastic, and directly above us is one of them. That is incredible. Lisa DeBette, 45, can't help but exclaim each time that she sees one in the wild. She's the scientific leader of our research team, and she's fixed her binoculars on one of the rarest, strangest, and least understood creatures on the planet. More than 80 feet above her head, high in one of the tall, ancient trees, a kangaroo is looking down at us. A kangaroo in a tree? That is just what Lisa thought when she met her first tree kangaroo about 20 years ago. The encounter took place at the Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle, Washington. Lisa was a graduate student of animal behavior. She had never heard of a tree kangaroo before, but meeting one changed her life. It looked like a big stuffed animal, she remembered, or something that Dr. Seuss may have dreamed up, impossibly soft with a rounded face, button eyes, pink nose, perked upright ears, and a long, thick tail. It was just about the size of a small dog or an overweight cat, with plush brown and golden fur. And in our picture here, we have a picture caption, Lisa scans the canopy for tree kangaroos. And here's our first picture of one. There were 2 of them, 2 mothers with tiny babies concealed in their pouches. They were as strange as they were adorable. They were like monkeys up in the trees, but they weren't monkeys, she recalls. They looked a little like bears, but they weren't bears. And then they had pouches for their babies, a totally different thing from most other mammals. She was looking at them, and what we're seeing today above us in the tree was a matchy tree kangaroo. It's one of 10 kinds of tree kangaroos on the planet. I was totally intrigued, Lisa said. I fell completely in love with these animals. Lisa learned at the zoo that the Matschie's tree kangaroo is among the rarest creature on Earth and getting rarer. As people cut down the cloud forest and killed more and more kangaroos, the species was disappearing. She decided to do something about it. And that's what brought Lisa and us, a team of scientists and volunteers that she had gathered from 3 continents to help her on this quest to the remote and magical forest in the clouds. We've come to try to learn the different secrets of these rare creatures. What do they eat? How many are left? What do they need to survive? We hope to find out these answers before it is too late. The Mastachii live in a lost world on a Stone Age island in a land that time forgot. That is how people still describe New Guinea. It's the 2nd largest island on Earth. Only one island, Greenland, is bigger. Only the Amazon has more tropical rainforest, but New Guinea has many other different habitats for animals to live in besides tropical rainforest, from seashores to coral reefs to glaciers to cloud forests. New Guinea was mostly unexplored by outsiders until the middle of the 20th century, and for good reason. The place is full of tangled jungles, steep mountains, erupting volcanoes, dangerous mudslides, aggressive crocodiles, poisonous snakes, and tropical disease. The few explorers who survived expeditions there noted another hazard. The local people sometimes had newcomers for dinner, literally. Headhunting cannibal tribes sometimes ate people, clothes and all, except for their shoes. They gave the shoes to the pigs to eat, just as dogs eat rawhide shoes. Things have changed. Headhunting fell out of fashion. It's thought that nobody eats people there anymore, but still, especially on the eastern half of the island, the nation known as Papua New Guinea, few roads mar the wilderness. Ancient forests remain unexplored. New species are still being found. Here you'll find birds that grow as tall as a man. Cassowaries remind you of dinosaurs. They sport tall helmets of bone growing up from their blue and black little heads. Long, skinny black feathers hang from their bodies like hair because they have only tiny stumps for wings. Cassowaries cannot fly, but they can sure fight. They can leap into the air and slash into their enemies with claws as sharp as razors. Other birds, like the pitowee, have poisonous feathers, and still others are so beautiful that they are called the birds of paradise. Strange animals abound. The tree-auk is a beautiful black and white striped possum with a pink nose and huge black eyes. The fourth finger on each hand is more than twice as long as the others, all the better to grab fish grubs from holes in rotting trees. The echidna is a spine-covered worm-eating mammal who can lay eggs instead of giving birth to live babies. The dorcopus is a fat little kangaroo who grows no longer than your forearm. And the patamelon is another who sleeps in soft beds of grass. The cuscus lives in trees. Its eyes are huge, its fur thick and soft. It holds onto branches with pink hands and a pink grasping tail. And this over here is our pitowee bird. The feathers in the skin contain a poison that is similar found in poisoned dart frogs in South America. Predators who try to eat this bird get sick, and they are not likely to try to eat this bird again. But perhaps the most amazing of them all is the pistachia tree kangaroo. It lives only in one place in the world, the cloud forests of the Huon Peninsula on the northeast coast of Papua New Guinea. The western half of New Guinea is part of a much larger nation of Indonesia. New Guinea isn't exactly the sort of place that you would expect a typical kid growing up in New York City apartment to end up, but Lisa was not typical. Lisa always loved animals, watching them, reading about them, writing stories about them, but being with animals wasn't easy. She was so allergic to fur that she even had to give away her beloved cat Twinkles when she was 11, and she couldn't have a dog either. As a child, sometimes she would wake at night grasping for breath. Lisa had asthma. She loved sports, but she couldn't join the track or the basketball team because sometimes running made her breathing worse. Who'd have thought that she'd grow up to be a tree kangaroo scientist climbing 10,000-foot mountains in the thin air of the cloud forest? Not Lisa's elementary school teachers. Since kindergarten, not one of them had encouraged her interest in animals. In fact, one teacher complained to Lisa's mother that she thought a little girl who always wrote stories about animals was odd. Lisa's two older sisters weren't as excited about animals as Lisa was, but their mom, the principal at a nursery school, understood. She loved animals and nature too. How could Lisa bring animals into her life? Living in New York City, how could she observe them in the wild? We didn't have a lawn or a backyard, Lisa remembers. Instead, we had the asphalt roof of the garage. And even there, she found a way. Little ants lived on the roof, so Lisa decided to study them. She used to collect them in Dixie cups. And over here we have a cassowary, which is a shy forest animal, and it eats mostly fruit. She used to collect them in Dixie cups. That way, she could pick them up without hurting them and watch whatever they do. Mainly, they tried to get out of her cup, and then she would let them go. Later in high school, Lisa researched a report on beluga whales, the beautiful white whales of the Arctic. She read books and articles, but that wasn't enough. She went to the New York Aquarium. She decided to see what she could find out by watching the beluga whales up close and personal, and she even got to touch one. The next year as a senior, Lisa volunteered to help a scientist at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. He was studying electric fish. One really big electric fish lived in the tank in his lab, and she remembered that he told her to put her hand in the tank to feel how strong the shock was. I was a little scared, but I did it, she said, and it felt amazing. It was a strong shock, but it didn't hurt. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And so is this whole world of learning about animals. Over here we have a picture of the Mustaches tree kangaroo enjoying the leaves, the ferns, and the orchids in its area. In college and as a graduate student, Lisa studied wild elephant seals and sea lions in California. When she was outdoors, fur didn't trigger her allergies. She studied titi monkeys and squirrel monkeys in the Primate Center at the University of California, Davis. But when she met her first tree kangaroo at Seattle's Woodland Park Zoo, she knew that they were special. She knew that they would be willing to do anything to help these endangered animals, and she knew what she had to do next. You guessed it. Oops, sorry, technical difficulties. Y'all know technology always hates Miss Holbert. There we go. You guessed it, Lisa began traveling to the Huon Peninsula. Most of the time she was based at the Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence, Rhode Island. There are tree kangaroos. There are tree kangaroos there, and she worked as the zoo's director of conservation and research. Every year she would make a trip to Papua New Guinea to try and see the tree kangaroos in the wild. Lisa made expedition after expedition, and the mountain hikes were hard. Here's Lisa. Lisa had made many expeditions into the pine forest to search for the tree kangaroo. She carried an inhaler to help her breathe, and she took special pills to open her airway. But over the years, she had built up her strength, and in Papua New Guinea, she was in for a wonderful surprise. Even though the air was thin at 10,000 feet, it was pure. America's air pollution made Lisa's asthma worse. New Guinea's clean air made it better. For weeks, working with local trackers and field assistants from home, she'd combed the mountains. Many times she thought that she saw a tail or a hunched body of a tree kangaroo looking down at her, but it was only a clump of moss. In a 5-week expedition in 1996, she saw 2 tree kangaroos, one of whom she glimpsed so briefly that she only got a single photo, and the other she was able to watch for 45 minutes and even videotape. But then she didn't see another for 7 years. No wonder. To most tree kangaroos, people are frightened enemies. With bow and arrows, sometimes with the help of dogs, people have hunted and eaten them for hundreds of years. As more Matashi tree kangaroos were killed, the ones who were left grew more afraid. The minute that they'd hear Lisa coming, they would hide. But the tree kangaroo's fear only increased her determination to help them. At the villages in the mountains, Lisa and her growing team met with local landowners. The team and the landowners spoke together about the disappearing tree kangaroos. And after meeting with the conservationists, the people agreed to set aside some of their land as no hunting zones. This land would be sort of a wildlife bank where the animals could live in peace. Lisa and her team also talked with local school teachers. Lisa wanted the kids to learn how lucky they were to have tree kangaroos and enchinadas, cuscuses, and triots. She wanted them to understand how important it is to protect the forest. Meanwhile, Lisa tried to learn about the tree kangaroos, even though she couldn't see them. How? With assistance from those who stayed in the field. She studied their small, oval, dark green droppings, the people call it peck, to try and see what the tree kangaroos were eating. They tried to guess how many animals lived there. She and the team looked for scratch marks on the trees where the animals' claws had dug into the moss-covered bark, and they talked to the local people who told Lisa that they had learned from hunting the creatures. And then in late 2003, everything changed. Lisa found out about a place where the tree kangaroos hadn't been hunted in many years. And in fact, no tree kangaroo lived there was old enough to remember hunters. In captivity, a tree kangaroo can live as long as a cat, sometimes even into their 20s. They had little fear of people. And that's where we're standing now. We're hoping that we can capture this beautiful tree kangaroo just for a short time. We hope to outfit it with a radio collar, and by following the radio signal with telemetry equipment, we want to track the animal through the dense forest, even when we can't see it. This way we can learn and we can help. We are so full of questions. Can we get the tree kangaroo down from the tree? Can we catch it before it gets away? Can we safely collar the animal? And if we do, will the collar stay on and work? Will our team be able to follow the signal? Will tree kangaroos show us what they need to survive so that we can help protect them? Or will the lives of these mysterious animals remain secret forever? Other scientists have told Lisa that tracking tree kangaroos is impossible, but we've got to try. The steady side of one of Earth's most ancient forests. Many of its plants have changed little since the time of the dinosaurs, more than 70 million years ago. The adventure begins. To join Lisa on her tree kangaroo expedition, we've come from all over the world. Lisa has gathered scientists from Massachusetts, from England, from Papua New Guinea. An artist came from Australia. A veterinarian flew in from Seattle. A zookeeper came from Minnesota. All of us have different talents that we hope to use to help the tree kangaroo. And as you'll see when you meet our team. Holly Reed is 48 and she is our field veterinarian. Working at Point Deficient Zoo and Aquarium in Washington State, she's done a root canal on a polar bear's tooth, removed a tumor from an aardvark, and even treated a kind of seahorse known as a leafy sea dragon for an infected swim bladder. The swim bladder helps fish float. Holly had to make a special life preserver to keep the sea dragon afloat while he got better, but this is her most exciting opportunity yet. Over here on the left, we have the Eclectus parrot, that is very common in New Guinea. This is the female. The male is bright green. Christine McKnight is 36, and she originally planned to be a medical doctor, but then she got an internship at the Minnesota Zoo, and now she works with some of the zoo's coolest animals, clouded leopards who are great tree climbers, beautiful, fluffy, long-tailed kibits called bingtarongs from Southeast Asia, and even Malaysian tapirs. Rainforest dwellers that look like a cross between an elephant, a pig, and a horse. But the rarest of them all, and her favorite, are the Matashi's tree kangaroos. Then we have Gabriel Porlak, who is 27 and is a graduate student of one of Lisa's two field scientists. He's been studying the tree kangaroo up in the cloud forest since 2002. Gabriel grew up loving animals, and as a kid, he had two pet grasshoppers, a gecko lizard, a parrot, a cat, a dog, and a pigeon named Bozo that he raised from an egg that he found in the gutter of his roof. But even then, he's a native of Papua New Guinea. He never saw a wild mustachioed tree kangaroo until he worked with Lisa. I fell in love at first sight, he said. You should hold one. You would never want to let it go. And you would want to do anything and everything to help this animal. Then we have Joel Blick, who is 28, and he grew up in Massachusetts. But ever since elementary school, he wanted to study mountain gorillas in Africa. He spent 2 years in Uganda doing just that. But he's also studied monkeys all over the world. Joel used to climb mountains, watching animals up in the trees and camping out. And that's why Lisa hired him as her field coordinator / scientist for the tree kangaroo conservation program. With Gabriel and the staff of native trackers, Joel lived in the cloud forest for a whole year. And now Joel is back to help train the new field coordinator. Toby Ross, who is 29 and is from England, with a master's degree earned in studying reptiles. Working with rare lizards, the orange-tailed skink that was only discovered in 1995, he learned how to solve the mystery of the most elusive animals. And in 2004, Toby caught and studied 120 of them and discovered for the first time where they live, how fast they grow, and what they eat. And Toby will take over where Joel left off. Then we have Robin Wingrave, who is 36, and is the artist who painted the maps in this book and the animals and the plants on them. Robin lived in Australia. While he was working in a resort hotel, he went along a tourist company nighttime nature expedition. And while shining spotlights in the tree, he discovered that there was a whole world of life up there that nobody knew about. Robin bought the gear he needed to climb into the trees and explore them himself, and he painted what he found. From my artwork, he says, it is my hope that the people get a new appreciation of the unique ecosystem that is up here in Papua New Guinea. And then here's our picture of the team. On the back row, we have Victor, Holly, Joel, Gesh, Wamari, Gabriel, Lisa, Robin, and Joel. And then down here in the front row, we have Nixon, Christian, Yango, Toby, and Joshua. This over here is Doria's tree kangaroo, and it lives in the central mountain ranges of New Guinea. Our next team member is Nick Bishop, who is 49 and took all the photos in this book. He is an author, a photographer, a biologist, and Nick was born in England and is a citizen of New Zealand, but he now lives in Michigan. He once lived in Papua New Guinea. When Nick was 14, his family moved there so his dad could work as a teacher with the United Nations program. Nick loves to explore the bush. Nick loved to explore the bush with the family's Papua gardener. This will be Nick's first time back in the country since he left when he was 18. And then there's me. I'm Cy Montgomery, and I'm 47, and I wrote the words in this book. I met Lisa when she was Director of Conservation and Research at the Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence, Rhode Island, back in the year 2000, before she moved to Seattle's Woodland Park Zoo. And I'd be hoping to visit her project in Papua New Guinea ever since. All of us prepared for this trip carefully. We all got shots to prevent tropical diseases. We brought pills to protect us from malaria. We stuffed our backpacks with rain gear and fleece jackets, water bottles, and bug repellent. And we've got hiking boots and sleeping beds, flashlights and walking sticks, clothespins and safety pins, lip balm and band-aids. But our personal gear is just the beginning. For our 2-week expedition, we'll also need food for ourselves and the local people who will help us. We'll need tents to live in, pots and pans to cook with, science and veterinarian supplies, and under Lisa's guidance, Gabriel and Joel brought and organized all of that in advance. This is Reggiana's bird of paradise. This is another animal. Now, I'm not going to read all of this, but this is the list of things that they brought with them. I'm going to zoom in. These are all the things that they brought with them on this trip. And I'll start down here at the bottom. We hope that it will all fit. We're at the cement and cinder block airport in Leh with all the supplies by 7 a.m. ready to leave. And we're still here at noon. The whole area is really cloudy, Lisa tells us after checking with the Mission Aviation Fellowship office. But they're going to try to get us to Yawan later this afternoon. Ours isn't a regular flight like you would take to visit your aunt or to go to Disneyland. Mission Aviation Fellowship planes are operated by missionaries, and the pilots are on a different schedule each day. Our plane has 5 other stops before it gets to us. Clouds, and what else would you expect in a cloud forest, can ruin the whole schedule. Once Joel was stuck in a remote village for 3 weeks waiting for a plane. 10 airstrips at different destinations are closed on this particular day. Clouds aren't the only problem. One airstrip doesn't have a windsock, so the pilot can't tell which way the wind is blowing. 2 others are closed because the grass is a runaway. On the runway is too long. Nobody has a lawnmower in the village, and people trim the grass with their bush knives. Finally, the Twin Otter comes at 2:30, and the weather is okay in Leh, but not so good around Yawan, the pilot says. So we're going to try to fly anyway. If the clouds are bad, then he might have to fly. And here is another animal, the endangered long-beaked ichthyon, which is using its snout to probe for an earthworm. If the clouds are bad, then he might have to fly about 14,000 feet, above 14,000 feet, to make sure the plane doesn't crash into the mountains. At heights like that, the air is thin. Does anybody have breathing problems? He asked. Both Lisa and Toby raised their hands. Toby is asthmatic too. We'll keep an oxygen bottle nearby, the pilot tells us. He points out to the air sickness bag. What else could go wrong? We don't even want to think about that. And at last, at 3:25 p.m., we're off. We rise through the air, leaving the city behind, and soon there are no roads below us, no houses, and then a few villages with thatched roofs and small gardens. Clouds, mountains, a rainbow. The spines of the 3-clad mountains look as jagged as the back of a stegosaurus. The pilot turns our plane sharply, and we see a beautiful waterfall to our right and small, neat, handmade houses thatched with palms. It's the Yawan village. We land at 3:50 p.m., and everyone applauds. We made it. Then here we have a picture of the team on the flight. And over on this side, we have this beautiful photograph of the Yawan village and the airstrip seen from the climb up. Here's the airstrip down here at the bottom. Beautiful. An amazing island. New Guinea is both the longest and the highest tropical island in the world, and there's plenty more that is special about this place. The island boasts the world's largest pigeons, the world's smallest parrots, its biggest butterflies, and its longest lizards. New Guinea has more orchid species than any other place of comparable size on Earth. A huge portion of the plants and the animals found here live nowhere else. 60% of its more than 11,000 kinds of plants, more than 400 species of its birds, and at least 60 species of its mammals live here. And there are many other kinds of creatures too, many of them unique. Scientists have counted more than 300 species of freshwater fish, more than 200 kinds of frogs, and more than 300 different reptiles on this island, and they're still counting. One reason New Guinea plants and other animals are unique is that these creatures evolved in isolation, away from the big land masses such as Asia and Australia. But the reason that these animals survive is that no one has ruined their homes yet. New Guinea is one of the wildest, leafiest spots left on our planet. Forest covers 65% of the island. In the United States, forests can cover less than half of the land. Unfortunately, in West Papua, owners of the nation of Indonesia, much of the forest has been razed for timber and for gold mines. But the picture is much better than the independent nation of Papua New Guinea. There, 90% of the land is still forest. Conservationists consider it one of the greatest biological jewels of the world. And in this picture, we have a Victoria crowned pigeon, the world's largest pigeon. Marsupial mania. Stuart Little, a little mouse with big parents, had nothing on this baby marsupial. Marsupials are special kinds of mammals. Even the biggest ones give birth to babies who are incredibly small. A 200-pound, 6-foot mother kangaroo, for instance, gives birth to a baby as small as a lima bean. That is what makes marsupials marsupials. Their babies are born so tiny that in order to survive, they must live in a pouch in the mother's tummy, and the pouch is called a marsupium. Don't you wish you had a marsupium? A baby marsupium lives hidden in its mother's warm, moist pouch for months, while there it sucks milk from a nipple like other baby animals. One day it is big enough to poke its head out into the world, and the European explorers who saw kangaroos for the first time in Australia reported that they had discovered a 2-headed animal, one on its neck and the other with a head on its belly. North America only has one marsupial. You may have seen it. The Virginia possum actually lives in most of the United States, not just Virginia. South America also has marsupials, but most marsupials live in or near Australia, and they include the koala, which is not a bear, two species of wombats, the toothy black Tasmanian devil, four species of black and white spotted native cats, although they're not cats at all, and many others. The most famous marsupial, however, are kangaroos. All kangaroos hop, some up to 6 feet high and faster than 40 miles per hour. More than 50 different species of kangaroos hop around on the ground, from the big red kangaroo to the 1 pound musky rat kangaroo. Few people know that there are 10 more species of kangaroos who have taken to the trees. Tree kangaroos hop too. Unlike regular kangaroos, they can also climb, although sometimes they look a bit unsteady. They use their sharp claws on the front feet to grip branches, and they can move their hind legs independently of one another, something regular kangaroos cannot do. Two tree kangaroo species live in Australia, while 8 live in New Guinea. At least that's how many species scientists have found so far. A new one, a black and white tree kangaroo called a dingiso, was discovered recently in the year 1995. This is a tree kangaroo that is found in Australia and is called the Lumholtz tree kangaroo. It's kind of cute. All right, and we're going to stop there. We will pick up here on Partners in Conservation on tomorrow.